What if I told you the history of life on Earth is missing pages? Not because nothing happened, but because the planet is a terrible record keeper. Like, imagine you're trying to read the greatest story ever written, and somebody ripped out the most important chapters, spilled coffee on the rest, and then let a dog chew the ending. That's basically the fossil record. And here's the part that messes with your brain. We talk about fossils like they're a clean timeline, like nature politely stamped dates on bones and filed them in a museum drawer labelled dinosaurs, please. But fossils aren't a complete record. Fossils are survivors. So let me ask you something. If an animal lived for millions of years, in huge numbers, across massive areas, shouldn't we be drowning in its fossils? Shouldn't it be impossible not to find it? And yet, some of the fossils we should absolutely have are missing. Today we're opening multiple cold cases in paleontology, the fossils that should exist, but almost never show up. And I want you to play detective with me, because in each case, there are only two options. Option 1, we haven't found them yet. Option 2, Earth erased them so completely, they may be gone forever. Here's the first rule that changes everything. To become a fossil, you don't just need to die. You need to die in the right conditions. Most creatures don't fossilize, they get eaten, they rot, they dissolve, they get crushed, they get scattered. Nature is basically running a recycling program with zero sentimentality. To fossilize, you usually need a few lucky breaks. You need to be buried quickly, like immediately. You need low oxygen so scavengers can't clean you up. You need minerals to seep in and replace your tissues. And you need the right kind of sediment to lock you in like a time capsule. So, if you die in a desert, maybe. If you die in a river delta, great odds. If you die in a rainforest where everything decomposes faster than your phone battery, good luck. And this is where I want you to pause and answer honestly. If fossilization is that rare, how many incredible animals lived and died with zero trace? Not, we haven't found them. I mean truly erased. Now, keep that thought, because our first missing fossil is so huge it's basically insulting. Look around you. Trees, flowers, fruits, grasses, crops. The planet is basically wearing a green jacket stitched together by flowering plants, angiosperms. So here's the obvious question. If flowering plants dominate Earth today, where's the long, gradual fossil trail of them becoming dominant? Because in many rock layers, flowering plants appear like they entered the story late, and then instantly took over the entire plot. Even Charles Darwin hated this. He famously called it an abominable mystery, which is the 1800s version of, this makes no sense and I'm upset. We'd expect to find older and older forms, primitive flowers, early seeds, transitional leaf structures, like a slow build-up before the big takeover. But often the record looks like, okay, here are older plant groups, and then suddenly, welcome to Flower Planet, enjoy your fruit. So what happened? Did flowering plants evolve in some hidden region and then explode across the world? Or were they around longer? But the planet simply refused to preserve the early stages. Here's the twist. Plants are annoying fossil candidates. Flowers are delicate, leaves rip, stems rot, and entire plants usually fall apart into compost. But plants leave behind one thing that does fossilize well: pollen. Pollen is nature's glitter. It gets everywhere. It survives everything. It shows up uninvited and refuses to leave. And fossil pollen can hint that flowering plants were around earlier than the big, obvious fossils suggest. So this case might not be flowers appeared suddenly. It might be flowers existed quietly, then conditions changed, and suddenly they spread everywhere. Now let me ask you, if something as world-changing as flowering plants can have missing pages, what else looks sudden only because the evidence is missing? Because our next case is exactly that. An animal group that shows up in the fossil record already wearing its superpower. Bats are mammals that fly, not fall with confidence like squirrels. Actual powered flight. And many bats echolocate, basically seeing with sound like living sonar systems. So naturally, we expect the fossil story to look like a smooth progression. A small mammal climbs, then it glides better, then fingers elongate, then membranes form, then flight becomes real. So here's the question. Where is the fossil of the almost bat? Where's the awkward prototype? Because some of the earliest bat fossils we have already looked like bats. It's like opening a movie, and the main character is already a master ninja in scene 1. Where's the training montage? Where's the falling off the roof? Where's the "I believe in you" speech? Now, there is an interesting clue from early bat fossils. Some early species appear capable of flight, but there's debate about whether they had full echolocation, like many modern bats, which suggests flight and echolocation may not have appeared at the same time. So maybe the almost bat existed, but didn't fossilise. And bats give us a perfect reason why: small bones and forest habitats. Forests are fossil shredders. Moisture, acidic soils, decay, scavengers. Everything's working against preservation. And small animals are more fragile, more likely to be destroyed, and easier to miss. So the missing bat ancestors could be a preservation problem, not an evolution problem. And now I want you to imagine this. If tomorrow someone finds one fossil, one mammal with partial wing anatomy, finger proportions halfway between climber and flyer, that single fossil would become one of the most important bridge discoveries in mammal evolution. So here's my question for you. Do you think the almost bat is still out there? Or do you think the forest already ate the evidence? Because speaking of forests, they hide something even closer to us. Okay, this one sounds like a joke, but it isn't. We have a decent number of human fossils across different time windows. But fossils of chimpanzees and gorillas, our closest living relatives, are extremely rare by comparison. So here's the question. How can our family album have a bunch of pages for us, but almost none for our closest cousins? It's not because chimps and gorillas weren't around. They were, for millions of years. The real culprit is geography and chemistry. Great apes mostly lived in tropical regions, where fossilization is brutally difficult. Wet heat accelerates decay. Soils can be acidic, which breaks down bone. Dense forest cover makes it hard to find exposed fossil-bearing rock. And many of the best fossil windows come from dry basins and sedimentary layers that just aren't as accessible in some rainforest regions. So it's not that apes are absent from history, it's that their environment is a blender for evidence. And this matters, because when you don't have fossils, you get gaps. And gaps create arguments. What did ancient chimp ancestors look like? How did gorilla lineages change over time? Where exactly did different splits happen? How much variation existed across regions? Without fossils, we're often forced to infer those answers indirectly, from genetics, ecology, and comparisons. Useful, but not as satisfying as holding a jawbone that answers the question in your hand. So let me ask you, if you could find one fossil tomorrow, would you rather find the almost bat, or a clear fossil sequence of ancient African apes that fills in our missing family pages? Because now we're leaving the forest and entering the largest habitat on Earth, the deep ocean. The deep ocean is enormous, it's ancient, it's packed with life. So here's the question. Why does the deep sea feel like a ghost in the fossil record? Where are the fossils of deep sea ecosystems across long stretches of time? Where are the ancient lineages we suspect lived down there for ages? Where are the weird giants, the nightmare fish, the soft-bodied creatures that look like aliens? Part of the answer is simple and brutal. Soft-bodied animals fossilise poorly. If you don't have hard bones or shells, you usually don't leave much behind. You get eaten, you get recycled, you become nutrients. The ocean runs a cleanup crew that never sleeps. But there's a second reason, and it's genuinely horrifying if you like history. Over long timescales, a lot of ocean floor doesn't stick around. Plate tectonics can drag ocean crust back into the Earth at subduction zones. So even if deep sea sediment holds fossils, the planet can eventually swallow the evidence. Imagine writing your diary for 1 million years, and then the floor opens and eats it. So if we're missing deep sea fossils, it might not be because we're lazy. It might be because Earth literally deleted the hard drive. Still, we do get clues. Microfossils in sediment cores, teeth and hard parts, chemical signatures that hint at ecosystems. Occasional extraordinary fossil sites where rare conditions preserved soft bodies. So here's a fun question. If a completely unknown deep-sea giant species existed for millions of years, could it have left almost no fossils and still be one of the most important animals in Earth's history? Because now I want to shift the mystery. Sometimes fossils go missing, not because nature failed, but because we destroyed them. Picture this. You're a fossil. You survived decay. You survived time. You waited millions of years in the rock, ready for your grand reveal. And then, a construction crew shows up. Jackhammer. Gone. This sounds dramatic, but it's real. Many fossils are discovered by accident. Road cuts, quarries, mines, foundations, pipelines. Which means an uncomfortable truth is also real. A lot of fossils were probably destroyed by accident too. Crushed, blasted, scraped away, dumped as rubble, before anyone knew they mattered. And yes, sometimes people notice and still don't report it, because it slows down work, causes paperwork, or they simply don't realise what they're holding. So let me ask you something. How many, once in a million, fossil discoveries were turned into driveway gravel? This is why some places do salvage paleontology, racing to document fossils before construction covers the site forever. It's also why paleontologists love when locals report weird bones. Because sometimes the biggest discoveries don't come from labs. They come from somebody saying, I found something weird in my backyard. Now, one more twist. Sometimes we don't just lose fossils to bulldozers. Sometimes we lose them to misunderstanding, misidentification, or hoaxes. Which brings us to the weirdest kind of missing fossil. The fossil that exists until I calm me. Until it doesn't. Okay. Quick reality check. When scientists have a gap in a story, humans do what humans always do. Some people try to fill the gap with guesses, and a few people fill the gap with lies. History has seen famous fossil frauds and misidentifications, cases where a missing link or important fossil was claimed, celebrated, used to support arguments, and later revealed to be wrong. Sometimes it's intentional deception, sometimes it's genuine mistake, and sometimes it's wishful thinking so powerful it becomes contagious. And here's why this matters to our video. When a fossil record has missing pages, the pressure to find a dramatic answer gets intense. The gap becomes a spotlight. Everyone wants to be the person who solves it. So let me ask you, if you lived in a time where an important discovery could make you famous, do you think you'd be patient and careful? Or would you be tempted to connect the dots a little too aggressively? Because the truth is, missing fossils don't just create mysteries, they create stories. And stories can be dangerous when they feel better than reality. Now, final act. After all these missing pages, here's the question that matters most. Are these fossils missing forever? Or are we simply getting better at finding the pages the Earth tried to hide? Here's the hopeful part. The fossil record isn't getting more complete, but our ability to interrogate it is getting smarter. We find fossils in places we used to ignore. We use satellite imagery to spot rock exposures. We drill sediment cores, we map caves. We recheck museum specimens that were misidentified decades ago. Sometimes the missing fossil is already sitting in a drawer, wearing the wrong name tag. And then there's the biggest game changer. We've gotten better at understanding bias. We're learning where fossils are likely to be missing, like rainforests and uplands, and how to search around those blind spots. So here's the question I want you to answer in your head right now. If you were a paleontologist with unlimited funding, where would you hunt? Deep-sea drilling programs? Remote tropical cave systems? Understudied sediment basins in Africa or Southeast Asia? Old collections in museum basements? Because depending on your answer, you might be describing the next world-changing discovery. And I want to end with one last perspective shift. We treat the fossil record like a courtroom transcript. Complete, objective, final. But it's more like a crime scene after a storm. Evidence washed away, clues scattered, footprints erased. And still, we're able to reconstruct astonishing stories, which means the missing fossils aren't just frustrating, they're an invitation to keep digging. So after all this, we're left with a final, slightly haunting question. How many creatures shaped our world, changed ecosystems, forced evolution to adapt, and vanished without leaving even a single bone behind? Because somewhere out there under the right layer of rock, a fossil might be waiting. One that answers a question we didn't even know how to ask yet. Now, your turn. Pick one. If you could discover one missing fossil tomorrow, what would you choose? A pristine early flowering plant that solves Darwin's mystery? The almost bat that finally gives us the flight training montage? A real fossil sequence of ancient chimp and gorilla relatives filling in our family album? Or a deep-sea fossil that proves an entire hidden ecosystem existed for millions of years? Drop your answer in the comments because I want to see what you'd bet on. And if you want more mysteries like this, hit like, subscribe and check the next video, because next we're going from missing fossils to something even creepier. Animals that might not be missing at all. They might still be out there.